You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
This is episode number 22 of the Angry Marks Rewind podcast here at AngryMarks.com, the number one source for pro wrestling and mixed martial arts news and information. Rowan Unruh, back with you again. Follow me on Twitter at Rowan Unruh. I've been accepting a lot of new Twitter followers. I don't know a whole lot about the Twitter game, but one person who does, he's back from his 30-day rehab stint. He's been rehired. Mike Poulin, welcome back. How are you, brother?
What was I in rehab for?
Well, you tell me. I had to give a big shout out to my buddy Keith for filling in last week while you were serving your wellness policy suspension. But I'm glad to have you back. I hope things are better for you. Let's try. My goal this week is to keep it under an hour because for the last couple of weeks we've been kind of going over. And I'm not going to say who, but someone at the top of the Angry Marks food chain has been kind of saying, kind of giving me the hint that, hey, let's keep it under an hour for production purposes. So, hey, what's new and exciting with you? Speaking of things that, we'll start the show off by not talking about wrestling at all. How are you going pandemic wise?
Actually pretty good. Other than we're still kind of quarantined. Although stuff is opening back up right now, so.
In Winnipeg here, you'd be hard pressed to even know, outside of the fact that restaurants are slowly starting to come back, that there was really no pandemic at all. Life is just back to normal, except kids aren't going back to school. I'm still off work, by the way. In between this, I'm trying to move to a new house, so. After this week's show, it's probably going to be a couple weeks before we get another show. So this is going to be it for a while until I move and get everything in order again. And why don't we just get on into it? What are we?
Normally we usually have 2 or 3 weeks in between shows.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we'll see how it goes. I may be able to get set up, a little earlier than I think. I'm a relatively negative person, so I'm already thinking, oh, this is going to take a long time, and I'm not going to. We'll see how it goes.
Yep. So anyway, we got Vengeance 03 on the docket today.
So why did you pick this one? This was your pick, and incidentally, I think you're getting 2 picks in a row this time around. Because we did Royal Rumble 1992, which was my pick, but we kind of mixed up the recording schedule. So you get, like the end of a snake draft, you get 2 picks now.
Snake style.
So why did you pick Vengeance 2003? It seems like a kind of middle-of-the-road sort of...
B show going into the bigger show the next month, yeah.
It does seem fairly random.
I think there's a few interesting matches on here, and, I mean, early 2003 is not as bad quality-wise as late 2003 is when you have more of the Triple H stuff and you have more of the... Vince and Stephanie stuff over on SmackDown that's, ramps up more once you get the summer out of the way.
2003 is very much a sleeper year. Like, if you think about it, we're coming off the heels of WrestleMania 19, and there was a big shift in talent. Like, Austin is gone, Rock is gone, Kurt Angle is away with Nick.
Austin is a GM on Raw at this point, isn't he?
I don't know.
GM with Bischoff, yes. Because that goes until Survivor Series.
Right. So
it starts sucking right towards the end of it, too, because it gets annoying. But,
So they kind of had to start over from scratch, and they were taking a lot of chances with the young talent. I think Lesnar in particular, they put a lot more effort.
They were starting to push Cena a little bit on this show.
Yeah, they put a lot of an emphasis on guys like Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Rey Mysterio, and this was the start of the brand-specific pay-per-views. And
yes, Bad Blood the month before was that. And which I think I know we're not talking about that show, but we will someday. But I think that show gets a bad rap because of the main event, because the rest of the card isn't terrible. It isn't great, but it's circling the bowl. You got Goldberg and Jericho and Flair and Michaels on that show, so.
It is their first attempt at these brand-specific pay-per-views, and I think shows like that, it kind of feels like a throwaway pay-per-view just because of the name. Like Eric Bischoff back in the day used to call them tentpole pay-per-views, like they're just holding up the company.
I think too that like the brand-specific ones in 03 aren't so bad. It's when you get into 04 and the roster starts to thin out that you start to see where the shows aren't very good.
Everybody wants like their WrestleMania moment. Nobody who grows up wanting to be a pro wrestler ever wants their vengeance moment.
Or their Judgment Day moment.
I want my bragging rights moment.
I want my no way out moment. Well, Eddie Guerrero got one of those the next year. Right.
People were saying a lot at the time, like, there's no Rock, there's no Austin, Triple H is on a different brand. If you think about it, like, if Austin doesn't step away, if Rock doesn't become a major movie star, these opportunities are not coming up very quickly for a lot of these guys. And I don't want to be negative, but, you take a look at someone like Eddie Guerrero. At this point in time, these guys are not going to be with us much longer. And if Rock and Austin, these guys don't leave, we may not have gotten that special like WrestleMania 20 moment.
Yes, I agree with you. Yes. And let's get into our first match here, which is Guerrero and Benoit for the United States Championship.
The referee brings the two guys in the middle to explain the rules because these two guys, as long as they've been doing this, they still don't know the rules. So the referee kind of has to...
This poor referee would get his ass kicked in this
match. This was not one of their best efforts. And I think a lot of it has to do with the ref takes 3 separate bumps in this match.
I think they're trying to protect both guys. They don't want either one of them to lose clean because they've got bigger plans for them coming up.
Like always, if you don't want them to lose, don't put them in the match.
Yeah, but look at who else is in that U.S. title tournament.
Well, come on, you could have had Ultimo Dragon versus Billy Gunn.
Oh, Lord. Matt Hardy versus Rhino.
Rhinoceros P. Hornhofer. So Benoit's tights actually has the words toothless aggression written on them because, you have to sell those T-shirts.
Yeah, that catchphrase got over.
Well, goddamn, we have to put that on his tights because he's got no teeth.
Prove Me Wrong should have gotten over, but I don't think it did either.
He had that one T-shirt where it was the X-ray of like a broken arm.
A broken freaking arm. Oh wait, that's somebody else. Eddie Guerrero as a heel still using his, I guess his Viva La Raza music, which when he would turn heel in 05, that would change, and it was actually an awesome theme when he turned heel in 05.
That was like a Psycho theme.
Yes. One of the few times that slowing down the themes actually worked.
I like that one.
Yes.
So on the previous SmackDown, or at least in the weeks leading up to this, Eddie had apparently tried to blind Benoit by spraying him in the eyes with spray wax, and Benoit comes out here, and he seems fine.
Selling that injury. It's not exactly the Freebirds blinding the junkyard dog with hair cream.
This was no Ricky Steamboat's larynx.
You slime!
Eddie hides in the corner to start until Benoit hits a heck of a shoulder block. Benoit starts working on the arm. He's winning a test of strength. Eddie slips out, spins around Benoit into a leg sweep that looked so smooth that I could barely tell that he did this. There's a pinfall reversal sequence, some near falls on Benoit, sending him outside. There's a bit of cursing that the network caught up.
God damn
it. Back in, Eddie takes him down with a headlock. He gets caught in a shoulder breaker. Benoit still can't get the crossface as Eddie gets to the ropes just in time. He escaped the crossface at least 2 or 3 times in this match. Eddie bails to the floor, but Benoit is right out there to I don't want to call it a suicide dive, so
yeah. Oh god. It's a
tope.
No, it's not. That's a tope con hilo. Oh, right. Wait, that's somebody else.
I get my topes and my quebradas mixed up.
No, the quebrada is the...
That's a lion salt, right?
The standing lion salt, yeah.
Okay. Eddie and Benoit get back in. He gets caught in a half Nelson of all things, so leave it to Benoit to make something like just a half Nelson on the mat look really painful. Eddie is right back up. He gets a Hurricane Rana out of the corner to take over again. They exchange top rope superplexes. Is it just me, or was Cole's commentary particularly wretched on this show?
Him and Taz both, actually, because they're usually better.
I understand that this was only still 2003, so Michael Cole as a head announcer was still fairly new, but Eddie pokes Benoit in the eyes, and Cole calls that a slap. There's a couple other instances on this show where Cole is just wretched.
You get all the ref bumps, and Eddie goes and grabs the belt and puts it over Benoit's chest to make it look like, and lays down, and this takes way too long, and you can't wake up the ref, and Cole's like, he could be Marlon Brando.
Because of his stellar acting job.
This referee is like dead.
The first time Eddie tries the frog splash, Benoit doesn't quite move out of the way quick enough, and so the point of Eddie's elbow just gets driven right into Benoit's back. That looks like it sucked. Yeah, the ref took multiple bumps on this. The first one came by a hip check that a 3-year-old could have hit harder. Yeah. And Kyoto's down for a month. Benoit gets the belt. He bonks Benoit right in the top of the head, and I'm sure Benoit was saying to him backstage, don't go easy because I'm not going to get my hands up on this.
Oh, Jesus. No wonder he ended up like he did. Oh, wait, I can't talk.
This sets up a frog splash for a delayed 2, giving us a great stunned face from Eddie. So the referee's still down. Eddie brings the belt back again, and this time he hits the referee, who's still not fully recovered from the mighty hip check. He hits him in the lower back, so of course, naturally, the ref grabs his neck and starts selling his neck. Eddie throws the belt onto Benoit, lays down. Now, this might be a fine idea in theory, but considering the errant hip check to the referee was down for about 2 hours, we could be waiting until the next Rumble for him to get up.
Hey, ref, you missed your spot again.
Benoit pops up, grabs the crossface to make Eddie tap, but of course there's no ref because he's still out.
Visual tap out.
There's a German suplex by Eddie, and Benoit tries the big swan dive, only to have Eddie pull the still dead referee in the way. So now the ref has taken 3 bumps at this point, and that's when we get the outside interference from Benoit's buddy, Rhino. It's his friend, it's his buddy. So we all know what happens here when your buddy or your friend comes out.
Heel turn coming.
He gores Benoit, big screw job, allowing Eddie to hit the frog splash. The best part about this sequence is Eddie just standing there shrugging. It's like, well, this may as well happen. And he gets the frog splash and the pin and the title. So he is the new U.S. champion. We have
an epic Rhino versus Benoit feud that never happens.
They were on their way to a masterpiece here when I think they messed it up with all this overbooking. I think you could have completely eliminated the last at least 2 ref. Well, save that.
Probably the last 5 or 6 minutes of the match with all the ref bumping.
Like on a positive note, this match went over 20 minutes and it felt like half of that. So it never dragged at any point, and I think that's one of the hardest things to accomplish. Not the best match that these two have ever had, but I did like it. It was a solid opener. It was probably the best match on the show.
Yep. And then we go to a backstage segment?
We have Vince in his office. What is Vince's obsession with houseplants? Every time we do a backstage office spot, he always has like various houseplants just...
Or flowers in general, I don't know. It's Vince. Goddamn, pal, I like flowers.
Well, in this case, he had a giant bouquet of beautiful roses, and he's smelling these roses, and in walks Stephanie for an acting lesson. And she just comes in, and she immediately faces the camera, which means her back is pretty much to Vincent. So they're both facing the camera. Bickering ensues, and Stephanie doesn't want to talk about my mother, Linda. And I guess they're going back to Raw, where Kane had tombstoned Linda, and Vince is going to confront Kane on Raw because of everything that they did to your mother. And
to your mother.
Vince is like, I got you some flowers to wish you luck in your match. And Stephanie looks at them, smells them. They're nice.
Those flowers are for Sable.
And Vince points out, oh, well, no, not these ones. These ones are for Sable. I got you a small bouquet of dried out daisies. And he hands her this pathetic little dry flower arrangement. And
like something a desperate guy who fucked up with his girlfriend would get.
Speaking of which, I should make a note. I need to get flowers for my girl. we get a recap of Billy Gunn versus Jamie Noble. So, in real life, at this time, Tori Wilson is engaged to Billy Kidman. So Vince must be like, well, goddamn, pal, Billy Kidman is small. Let's put her with the big Billy.
The one that's neither one of them are over anyway, but you know.
They are two guys that are the beneficiary of this brand split, because without this, how much screen time is Billy Kidman getting?
And how much more screen time do we need of Billy Gunn in 2003?
Billy Gunn will always get chances because he's big. So we've established on screen.
Billy Gunn is a great tag wrestler, but not so much as a single.
During this period of time, he was given chance after chance after chance, aside from being fired. But when he was employed with the company, he kept getting restarted pushes over and over again.
And what better way to do an angle than have Jamie Noble want to screw around with Tori Wilson and still have a girlfriend?
Right. So Noble wants to sleep with Tori and has basically offered her thousands of dollars. And Tori finally...
Yeah, that was this angle. Jamie Noble had a rich relative or something.
Did they explain where Jamie Noble was getting all of his money from?
A rich relative had passed away, if I remember the storyline.
I do not. So I'll take your word for it. Tori finally agrees to sleep with him if he can beat Billy on this show. Jamie comes out to the ring with this briefcase claiming that it was full of sex toys and
sex dolls and
sex oils. This was not the James Gibson that I grew to love in Ring of Honor.
Although, the promo's funny, but
Billy kicks the briefcase into his face before deciding that he's going to open it up and reveal that there are, in fact, sex toys, and probably from Vince McMahon's personal collection.
You're going to win this match, by God, Jamie, and I'm going to give you these to... I don't know.
Because you're little.
Goddamn, pal, it's such good shit.
So Billy takes him outside for a wheelbarrow face plant, misses a splash in the corner. Jamie tries a dive to the floor but gets caught, only to have Billy's knee give out. Cue Nadia to come down. Here was another spot of Cole's commentary where he said, inconspicuous by her absence.
That's not the right word.
That's not how it's done, Michael.
It's conspicuous. Haven't you listened to Gorilla Monsoon or Jim Ross?
This man was a war correspondent for CNN. I assumed that he was intelligent with words and talking.
Nope. You would be wrong about CNN in general, but
So Billy jumps over a kick to the leg, and he kicked his leg out of his leg, and then he grabs Noble for this Cobra Clutch slam. That Noble, did he ever go up for this? This was fun to watch.
Yes.
Watching a large man toss a tiny man through the air is always entertaining. Somewhere Jinder Mahal's like, I'm gonna steal that one day. Jamie hits this gigantic super DDT off the second rope, goes for the cover, but Nadia puts Billy's foot on the rope. So Jamie's like, "Why are you doing that, Nadia?" So they get into a yelling match. Tori, for some reason, walks over to the other side, and she gets kissed by Jamie, causing Noble to get slapped back and forth by the two women. Noble goes for an O'Connor roll, pushes Billy, or I guess Tori was supposed to take a bump, but Billy just held on to her and gave her a hug on the apron so she didn't fall down. And then Jamie rolled him up for what I saw was a clean pin.
Yep. And Cole said they had the tights.
I did not see that.
You're making shit up, Cole.
I know that he's supposed to be a heel. If it's a shoot, call it like a shoot. He did not pull William Gunn's tights, and therefore, due to verbal contract, Tori must now have relations with Jamie Noble on TV next week.
I was going to say, which we are apparently going to see on SmackDown next week, so watch SmackDown, everybody.
They kept this short, and even though it made it feel just like a TV match, this was much more about getting in and out and moving on. Pardon the pun.
And your next thing is a segment with Funaki, SmackDown #1 announcer.
Funaki is interviewing the APA because they are getting ready for their Invitational Barroom Brawl. So apparently the Brooklyn Brawler wanted to be in this match. And APA says, you need to do something impactful in order to be invited. So they show a clip on SmackDown of the Brooklyn Brawler attacking the APA with chairs. And this gets ignored. And Bradshaw's like, hey, Funaki, you should come here too. I'll give you an invitation. And Funaki's like, what do I wear?
And Funaki actually never ends up showing up for this, I don't think.
Oh, no, he was there.
He just doesn't get an entrance.
Bradshaw says, come as a Japanese reporter who wrestles part-time.
Okay.
And then the Easter Bunny hops through the camera shot. And,
Damn!
And Bradshaw is like, this is going to be fun, as he's, sipping Jack Daniels straight from the bottle. And
how much do you want to bet that he was drunk already before this started?
I'm guessing most of these guys were drunk. So let's go through the roster of talent that was the recipient of this brand split. Thank God there was a brand split, because otherwise we would not have the Bashams. It's Farouk Bradshaw, the Brooklyn Brawler, Chuck Palumbo, Brother Love, Canyon, who's still employed, the Conquistadors, the Bashams, Doink the Clown, the Easter Bunny, who's a dude in an Easter Bunny mascot outfit.
I believe Doink was Nick Dinsmore. I know Nick Dinsmore's in this.
Yes, you are correct.
And Rob Conway's also in this, but I'm not sure who he was.
We've got Funaki. We've got John Hennigan.
From Tough Enough.
We've got all three members of the FBI. Shannon Moore.
Coming out to a knockoff of No Sleep Till Brooklyn.
Yep. Matt Capitelli, who did nothing in this match. Matt Hardy, who
unfortunately could have had something in the industry, but he had a tumor or something a few years later that would pretty much end his time in the industry.
He's one of those cases where, if he had stayed around, I honestly don't know how successful he would have been, especially in this company, because he was so short. So he wasn't their type of guy. And the fact, I don't want to sound mean or speak ill, but he wasn't going to last long in this company regardless. I don't think, in my opinion.
No,
I could be wrong.
He probably would have had to run somewhere.
Finishing up the spots here, we've got Orlando Jordan, Spanky, who was dancing in a dope-ass suit on top of the bar, and a guy who should have had a bigger push, and probably would have if his life hadn't taken a sad turn, to Sean O'Hare.
That guy, I liked him, and he never really got like a high spot on the card because of his habits and stuff, but he was awesome in like the last days of WCW.
Did you hear the Sean O'Hare WrestleMania 17 story?
No.
Okay, so WrestleMania 7, I'll paraphrase this. So WrestleMania 17, we're coming off the angle where Shane McMahon buys WCW. So it's Shane versus Vince. Right before the match, Shane points up to the skybox to give a shout out to all the WCW guys, and one of them.
Oh yeah, I know that. I remember this. Yeah.
One of them is Sean O'Hare. Apparently, Sean O'Hare he came to the building that day. His clothes were all torn. He was bleeding from everywhere. What happened was he was told to bring the WCW tag title belt with him to the building, and he had forgotten it in his rental car. So he calls the rental car company. Place is closed. He decides to break into the rental car company, climbing over fences with barbed wire along the top.
Ooh, that's always a good idea.
Busting into his car because that's where the belt was, and apparently he looked right at the security camera and showed his ID to prove that it was his car that he was breaking into. And then he climbed the fence again with the belt, showed up. He looked like he was a mess, but goddamn it, he had the belt.
Goddamn, pal, good job. You got your belt back. You're a tough son of a bitch.
So the Conquistadors in this match were Rob Conway and Johnny Jeter. Doink the Clown was Nick Dinsmore, and the Easter Bunny was Aaron Stevens.
Damian Sandow.
So there's a big bar set up, complete with bottles, some tables, a big saloon.
And a Brother Love promo.
Everyone's handed a beer as they come in, including Matt Hardy, who, according to his real player graphic, hates bar fights.
Attitude version 1.
Apparently, the rules of this match is that there are no rules, but then Bradshaw says the last one left drinking wins. So there is a rule.
Some like beer and some like grass, but if you're standing in this bar, we're going to kick your ass.
God, it's like I'm there. So Brother Love tries to, he wants to have a prayer to open. He asks APA for forgiveness, and then he breaks the bar stool over the Conquistador's
I was going to
head.
say, forgiveness for this.
Welcome to the main roster, guys. So most people are standing around drinking. Some are beating the heck out of each other. The whole time.
What a way to get paid for this show, by the way, just to stand around drinking.
The whole time, Funaki is just sitting at the bar. He doesn't take a single bump until the very, very end, but he does not get hit once. So that is a good gig.
He makes a paycheck.
Some of the highlights include Sean O'Hare grabbing some pool cues and bonking them on top of APA's heads, because, he's a martial arts expert.
Hiya!
Shannon Moore dives off the bar, tries to take out O'Hare, but then Brother Love throws him through a mirror. The Easter Bunny goes through a window. Matt Hardy dives onto one of the Bashams and Chris Kanyon, who are both sitting on a table. He had to do that move twice to break the table. Bradshaw chucks a bottle at Brother Love's
I am
head.
the table.
And despite the fact that Farouk is standing right next to him, Bradshaw is considered he's declared the winner.
I guess they said Farouk was eliminated, and they somehow missed it.
I suppose so. This wasn't wrestling in any way. It was just an old joke that got old very quickly.
It's basically a way to kill 5 minutes on a show.
There was no point to this other than to just fill
You
time.
could have had you probably could have had an extra tag match on this show.
Like, you have these people that are getting pushed in recent months, like Matt Hardy and Sean O'Hare. At least they're stuck in this mess designed just to keep APA over.
Right.
Like, do we really need this? What we do need then is Jamie Noble backstage looking at a very worn copy of Tori's Playboy issue.
I don't know. I don't want to know what he was doing with it.
And
other than looking.
The camera catches a very clear shot of one of the pictures, which is not censored whatsoever on the network. And then he just starts bragging to some rando backstage worker saying,
"What about Nydia?
I get to touch and I get to do whatever I want. What about Nydia? You mind your own business, boy."
She'll be all right. Her boyfriend's just cheating on her.
Next up, we get the SmackDown Tag Team titles. The very creatively named World's Greatest Tag Team defending against Rey Mysterio, who at this point is the Cruiserweight Champion, and his partner, the previously mentioned Billy Kidman.
You could have had a Rey Mysterio Matt Hardy rematch on here.
I suppose you could have.
And maybe, but then again, what do you do with Shelton and Charlie?
Put them against the APA.
Ah, there you go. We just gave this card a little, yeah. Anyway, this is a good match.
This is a very good match. So Shelton takes Ray down early to start. They both seem to botch a head scissor, but they recover nicely. Something like a Bubba Bomb gets a 2 on Ray, and then a Power Slam gets the same. Mm-hmm. And then we're already in chinlock territory, which hopefully is not a sign of this match being short.
How long is this match?
This probably went about 17 minutes or so.
Yep. Gotta kill time.
We get a BK Bomb, speaking of creative move names.
And a theme song that doesn't fit him.
Gives Kidman 2, and Ray's fast enough to break up the dive. We get a 619 that's also broken up, so Ray settles for a springboard-seated senton to the floor, which drops Benjamin. Kidman decides, hey, hold my beer, and he does a shooting star press from the top rope to the floor. And things have picked up in a really big hurry, so thankfully the fans seem to appreciate that, and which is a good sign after the previous segment. Just seemed to kill this crowd off. Shelton whips Kidman into the post from the apron. That's a cool spot that we need to see more of.
Yes.
Kidman slips out of a surfboard, sends Charlie outside, but they're not doing the second hot tag that easily, and then the tag connects. But Shelton had the referee, drawing some very nice heat from this crowd, so they didn't see the tag. Second time it works a little bit better, and Ray comes in with an enziguri to Sheldon. 619 into the springboard seated senton. Looks to be the finish when the referee is with Kidman. This allows Shelton to make the blind tag. So the finish is Charlie has Ray in the electric chair position. There's a blind tag, turns around, and Shelton does what looks like Kind of like a doomsday device, but more just
a
like
doomsday, like into a reverse bulldog.
Or like a doomsday / power bomb combination.
Yep. Good match.
Yeah. The other spot that I wanted to note here was when the baby faces were on offense. Kidman has one of the guys. I forget which one had. You know which spot I'm talking about when they do like the super lifted Rana from the top rope.
Yeah, that spot. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it was Haas that was on the. Yeah. He's a Haas.
Either way, that was a really fun segment. I know that the cruiserweight title is taking a hit by having the champ do a job on this, but damn, this was a fun match.
Yeah.
So
it's a good match.
It seemed to me like they just told the four guys, just go nuts for 15 minutes. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially when you have four people who are capable of doing stuff like this. We get a video recap of Stephanie ripping Sable's top off, including, first of all, both of them, Stephanie is giving chase to Sable in a parking lot. Both of them are in heels. So naturally, we're going to make them run. And
of course we are.
When did Stephanie's man grunting begin? Like every time that she's doing it, she's like, arr, 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 and she's trying to
McMahon grunting.
She's trying to pull Sable's top off, and this is the low point of this show.
Of course, as you would think.
Sable versus Stephanie McMahon. For some reason, they announced that there's no count out.
It's a cat fight.
Talk to me about Stephanie's wardrobe.
It was clothes. I don't know.
And yet still very low cut. So
they're trying to make her hot, and it doesn't work.
No, you don't make Stephanie hot when your opponent is Sable.
No.
Like, Stephanie is a very attractive woman. I've said too much.
Don't incriminate yourself.
Michael Cole has the nerve to say that this should be good because both of these women were former women's champions.
Do you really want to bring up either of those eras into the women's division?
I'm so glad that we're done with that era and we've moved on to something that's a little bit more respectable.
Sable was there because she was going to be in Playboy, and Stephanie was a women's champion because why? I don't remember.
Because she's Daddy's girl, and
they got to put her and Triple H over, I guess.
And the heir apparent's wife. So the cat fight is on, with the chase going through the crowd, mainly focusing on shots of Sable's wedgie.
Oh, Jesus.
Back in with Sable's talking trash and very slowly stomping her in the corner. And so Stephanie is lying face up, selling, and Sable decides to straddle her and start grinding and doing her little grinder.
You boys ready for the grind in 2003?
Sable looks like every college student's mother trying to be cool at their child's frat party.
It's Stifler's mom.
Right. The commentators start comparing the slapping ability of both women, followed by punches that makes Shane McMahon's punches look really good. They head outside again, where the referee has to take a chair away from Stephanie. Stephanie hits the dreaded slap before mounting Sable for the horrible slaps, and somewhere Jenna Maraska's like, I get it now.
I'm going to do this someday.
Sable's top is ripped apart again. What is with Sable and her, like, she makes money. She should be able to afford clothes that don't appear like they were purchased off of Wish.
And Brian Hebner tries to cover her up.
Yeah, referee Brian Hebner takes off his shirt, exposing his sickly physique. And
Taz makes a steroid joke.
Yeah, if there's anyone that needs steroids, it's Brian Hebner.
You need Tyga Pro.
A-Train runs down and just mows down Stephanie. And that's way less sexy than it sounds. And Sable gets the pin.
Lord. The less said about this, the better.
On a very sliding scale, this was very bad. And they were running around as fast.
-5 stars!
They were running around as fast as they could, and they didn't bother trying anything to like resembling a match. That being said, it was the right call here to keep it short, which made it simply just inoffensive. So it's certainly not good or anything, but given the kind of disaster this had the potential to be, I'll take what I can get.
And it's time for our next match.
Get a video recap of John Cena challenging The Undertaker. So Cena is on a roll now. He's right in the heart of this heel white rapper gimmick, even though he hasn't really won anything major.
He was in a title match with Brock a few months earlier.
But he wanted a big match because this was apparently close to his 1-year anniversary. So Cena starts calling himself the real legend of WWE, and you just don't do that. And Undertaker wasn't happy, and here we are.
And Taker can start his bike on the stage.
Cena's in the ring. He does his rap, basically just says the Undertaker is old and Cena is awesome. Undertaker comes out, starts his bike, gets to the top of the stage, and then the bike dies. And you can see him. The wheels are turning inside Taker's head, and he starts trying to start this bike again. It just keeps stalling. And then, anyways, he gives up on the bike after about, close to it seemed like the longest minute of John Cena's career, because I guarantee you Cena was like, I don't know what to do. What's happening? And the director just kept a close shot on Cena this whole time. So finally Undertaker gives up, and he just starts walking down the ramp. Certainly better than the Hulk Hogan motorcycle fiasco the previous year.
This match, on the other hand.
See, I didn't hate this match. I was jonesing to hate this simply because, my goodness, what this could have meant in a different era under different circumstances. Taker has him in the corner early. Cena actually slaps him in the face. So this earns him one heck of a toss and a holy beating early on. They head outside with Cena getting tossed into the barricade, but he stops to grab a drink of water to spit in Undertaker's face, and amazingly, this has no effect on him. And then Cena just gets posted again. All Undertaker in the early going. Taker does the apron leg drop, which makes things even worse. Back in the ring, Undertaker drives some knees into the ribs, and Cole says he's been doing this for 11 years. We get...
Cole's having a bad night tonight.
Cena starts stomping on Taker while he's down, and Taker's just selling these stomps. And Cole's like, this is his patented ground and pound style.
Hmm?
Yes, his ground and pound style was stomps to a prone opponent. Taker comes back, does the old school, which is at this point just medium school, and a choke slam, and Taker pulls Cena up at 2. Because he's not done teaching this young motherfucker a lesson.
Yeah.
Cena escapes the last ride, hits a DDT for a much-needed break. So with Undertaker down, Cena pulls off the turnbuckle pad, making me wonder why the referee isn't watching Cena at this moment. Back up, Undertaker elbows him in the face, but charges into the exposed turnbuckle. So now Undertaker's ribs are apparently broken or dissolved into dust. So Cena just keeps working on the rib. There's a big boot and a leg drop. Gives Undertaker a 2 count, and he switches to a choke on the mat in the corner. There seems to be a lot of major spot calling, or was I just hearing things?
Wouldn't be far from a course from Cena. Spot calling.
So Cena uses a distraction to hit him in the ribs with a chain, setting up the FU for a 2 count. And this is where I got upset, because there is no logical reason for this not to be the finish. Really, if you...
Gotta keep Taker strong.
Why do you have to protect Taker if you're building up Cena to be a main eventer?
Because I don't know.
It hurts the legitimacy of the FU when it becomes just a big-time finisher later on. And
then Cena goes for the 10 punches in the corner, and last ride.
Clearly he's done no homework on The Undertaker. When your finisher is that last ride powerbomb, you don't do punches in the corner. Countless men have done this and failed, and Cena is just another geek on that list.
And Taker wins, and scene.
This should have been Cena's chance to get launched into the main event, but instead it's just Undertaker pinning him after a shit ton of offense. And if Cena can't beat him while he's cheating and finishing and hitting his finisher, why would I want to see him fight again? It's a completely wrong ending to
bad booking.
So speaking
of bad booking,
we follow two surefire Hall of Famers, and we get Zach Gowen.
What an angle this is here.
So for those of you who don't know who Zach Gowen is, he's a young man at the time. He's 19 years old, and they tell a great babyface story about him fighting the... Speaking of which, At the beginning of this pay-per-view, they do the opening clip where they build up the show. And
when I was young,
I fought through so much to get where I am and blah, blah, blah. And one of the people doing this is Stephanie McMahon. I can't imagine that she had to fight a lot to get where she is on this day.
Nope.
One person that did was young Zach Gowen. He had cancer in his leg, had to be amputated at above the knee to basically save his life. I do feel bad because over the years, Zach got a lot of heat over his backstage behavior, and he was trying really hard to fit in. But think about it. The kid is 19 years old at this time. He's fighting cancer. He's
getting the chance of his life.
He's not raised in this business. He's raised by a single mom. All he wants to do is be a wrestler, and he's thrust into this world that he has no idea about. And he went on HBO one time saying, "Hey, I know that I know what I am. If I had two legs, they wouldn't have hired me. I get it."
Actually, if you believe Bruce Pritchard's story, they hired the wrong one. They almost hired the wrong one-legged wrestler.
They actually did. I was actually going to get to that. There's a very famous story of how he got his job. So Jim Ross at this point is still the head of talent relations, but John Laurinaitis is being groomed for this job. So the office gives Zach's number to Johnny. They give him the direct contact. Johnny ends up calling the wrong one-legged wrestler. It's a guy from Florida in his 30s that Steve Kern told him about. Zach is 19 and from Michigan. There's a very funny clip in a June 2012 Raw where Vince makes an actual joke about this. You're the man who hired the wrong one-legged wrestler. As it turns out, Zach's fame did go to his head very quickly. He was a very special attraction. He wasn't Andre in the 70s and 80s special attraction, but he developed a huge ego. And
he literally only lasted about 3 months.
He got a really bad substance abuse issue, and then they eventually cut him. They said it wasn't worth it.
Too bad he was never in a Royal Rumble.
What if Vince Russo was booking SmackDown at this time?
Oh God! Oh boy!
Tell me that wouldn't have been fucking awesome.
Vince Russo.
We're already pushing him down the stairs in a wheelchair. We're getting a prosthetic leg on a pole match.
And the wrong guy would win.
So we recap Vince McMahon and Zach Gowen, which seems to be a David and Goliath story, but I'm still not sure what Vince is getting out of this. It's something that Vince wants to screw Stephanie over. But the story of Stephanie...
They're setting up the Vince-Stephanie feud.
Oh, I remember that. That was horrible.
Yeah. That's what we want to see. We want to see more McMahons. Ratings are going down, but here comes more McMahons. That'll make it better.
We want to put a jacked-up father beating up his daughter on TV. We want you to pay for this.
And we want the announcers to wonder if that's ever happened in real life. That's comfortable. That'll sell tickets. Yeah.
So the match starts. Vince casually backs him in the corner, and I had never seen Vince more jacked than he is on this show. He was a refrigerator, and
yes,
and Zach Gowen was a tiny straw of a man. There's some shots in the corner. They have Zach in trouble early, and then he backdrops Vince over the top rope, and he hits his one-legged acai moonsault to the floor. He hits a middle rope famouser. This gives Zach a 2 count, despite neither having that much impact. Vince starts in on the good leg, and Michael Cole, right there, thank God he's there, to explain to us how much of a problem this could be for Zach. Never let it be said that WWE left you alone to figure something out on your own.
Never let it be said that that WWE thinks wrestling fans are smart.
So previously in the match, Vince had done wrapping his good leg around the pole. And then it's Vince's turn to get crotch in the pole. Taz seems very overly concerned with the billionaire grapefruits. And so Zach starts ramming.
Oh no, the grapefruits!
Zach starts ramming Vince's leg into the ring post, and there's Michael Cole. Now the playing field is even.
I was gonna say though, when Vince is beating up on Gowen in the middle of the match, that they wonder why the referee isn't stopping, and Taz has a good line of saying, well, if the ref stops it, Vince may fire him. You're putting over Vince, an evil bastard.
Mm-hmm. Gowan hits a top rope bulldog, kind of. And then another middle rope drop kick. And then he hits the great one-legged moonsault. Keep in mind, this is the one-legged moonsault that pinned the Big Show in order to get this match. But
it's not going to pin me, goddammit.
On VKM, it's only a 2. So at this point, I'm just waiting for Gowan to lose.
And Vince goes for a chair.
That gets drop kicked in Vince's face, and then we get the classic Vince over-gigging. He was leaking buckets on this.
I think Mike Chioda got bumped again. He's having a bad night.
I hope Chioda got a bonus this time.
A hazard pay.
I guarantee you, the pre-match meeting, Vince is like, no blading.
Except for me. And two of our main eventers. So then Gowan misses a second moonsault. It was like a whisper in the wind type moonsault senton thing. And then Vince, corkscrew plancha.
He misses it. He crashes and burns, and Vince just lies on top of him and gets the easy pin.
And of course, that's why I hate the finish here, because for all the shit that Vince said, you'd think he'd get a comeuppance, and he really doesn't.
They were trying as hard as they can here, but there's really nothing much you can do with this concept. Yes, Gowan has one leg. He does a lot of impressive things for someone in his condition, and Vince is notorious for when it's time for him to put someone over, he does it full force. But I don't know why he couldn't do it here.
I'm not going to lose to a one-legged man, goddammit. It's such good shit.
So this is pretty much it for Gowan, meaning anything. As you can only watch this so many times. Like, yes, it's an inspirational story, but it's inspirational one time.
But it doesn't have the happy ending that it should.
You see it 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 more times, and it's not an attraction anymore. As Gowan is, he's standing in the middle of the ring. He's getting a standing ovation, but it's lackluster at best. And then Taz is like, how many people get to say they've busted Vince McMahon wide open? Like,
a lot.
A lot of guys, actually.
Anyone he's feuded with.
Yeah. Josh Matthews catches up with Eddie Guerrero, leaving the building with his new title belt. He said, victory is a victory. What happened to Benoit is his own fault. So, a meaningless segment. But it took 10 seconds, and so it didn't take anything away from this show.
Video package hyping the main event.
Yeah, so basically what happened was Brock Lesnar beat Kurt Angle to win the title at WrestleMania in Angle's last match for several months. Lesnar then feuded with Big Show for a couple months, and then him and Angle are best friends.
I gained a genuine friend, and now I'm going after his title. Because that's logic.
That's what friends do, right? So they announce out of the blue.
That's what friends are for.
Now all of a sudden it's a no DQ match. Haven't all 3-ways by definition been no DQs?
Yes. Apparently not.
So Big Show has the first big spot of the match where he clotheslines the new best friends down, and he throws Angle out. He hits a choke slam early on Lesnar for a very early 2. Angle can't German suplex the Giant, but he can pick his ankle for the ankle lock. Lesnar dives in for the save. Kurt is the first one to bring weapons into this ring with some garbage can lids. And there's a series of shots that finally puts Big Show down.
Shades of the hardcore division.
Show is right back up, and he hits a double suplex on both Angle and Lesnar. So the two of them come back, and then they double choke slam Show. And Taz is like, so Big Show suplexes the guys who suplex, and then they choke slam the guy who choke slams.
Makes sense.
Score 1 for the Red Hook school system. Angle gets knocked outside, and there's an F5 on Show. That gets a delayed 2 count with Angle pulling the referee to the floor. Another case of this referee being prevented from doing his job, and then he always asks the guilty party, what are you doing? It's like, try not to lose, bastard.
I'm trying not to lose, dang it.
And you see it all the time in 3-way matches or handicap matches. Or
tag matches.
Where one guy tries to pin the opponent, but the partner pulls him off. Or the other participant. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, I'm trying to win.
We're partners when we're beating this guy up, but the goal here is to win. I still don't like you.
There's a nice looking running powerbomb, but Angle makes another save with the chair. Angle starts giving out free concussions to both guys with just these vicious, unprotected chair shots right to the skull. I do love how Lesnar always takes bumps from the ring through the ropes onto the floor. So
I cannot go. I'm too big to go over the top rope.
Unless you're Drew McIntyre. In which case, I will sell the shit out of all of your stuff.
Yep.
So there's a bleeding Lesnar on the floor. Angle's bleeding. There's an Angle slam. That puts Big Show through the announcer's table. Or, I don't know, I guess Big Show just jumped up backwards and did a 3-foot trust fall onto the table while Angle pretends to hold him.
No, not the Spanish table.
Yeah, it was a safe-looking spot that got the crowd pumped.
Yep.
This leaves Angle and Lesnar in the ring for the big showdown, with Lesnar basically tossing him over the top rope from F5 position. Angle's now bleeding buckets from a cut on the back of his head. Angle tosses Brock with a release German suplex, sending Brock onto his stomach for a great-looking flip. And Michael Cole, Brock did a 360. It's like, no, you idiot. If he did a 360, he'd have landed on his feet.
Cole does not know science.
It does sound a lot better than Brock did a 270, which is actually what happened. So we get an Angle slam attempt, which is countered into a spinebuster by Lesnar for a 2, but Lesnar slaps on this sleeper variation, and Taz can't help himself. He's like, that's like the Taz mission. You know, that's my move, the one that I did when I was a wrestler, when I was doing this. I did this move.
Shut up, Taz.
Big Show breaks it up by dropping a big, giant, fat 500-pound leg on both guys at the same time. He covers both guys, and both of them kick out at the same time. We get a double choke slam. That gets another pair of near falls, but Lesnar kicks the monster in the grapefruits. Lesnar charges at Angle, who moves. Lesnar hits the ring post. Angle clamps on the ankle lock. And then he lets go of the Angles. He lets go of Lesnar so he could Angle slam Big Show. And then Angle slam. He gives Angle
Spit
slam.
It out.
It's hard to talk. Kurt Angle, ankle lock. I get confused. He hits the Angle slam. He hits the Angle slam on both guys and ends up pinning Lesnar and winning the championship. There, I said it.
There you go.
I think I pulled something.
Oh, no.
This was a typical WWE style 3-way. One guy gets taken out while the other two fight. You mix in some safe, simple 3-way spots. The monster heel gets some offense on the two heroes, which it makes sense. You don't want Thanos to be a complete geek when he's fighting the Avengers, right?
No.
So
you want him to be a monster.
And that's exactly how you want something like this to go. And despite, some of the, I didn't appreciate the open chair shots, but they made the match look quite well. I think Angle winning but more importantly beating Lesnar and not Show, it sets up another big match with Brock down the line. They would do the Iron Man match in September, which would...
They would have a match at SummerSlam.
Right. That was after Lesnar turned heel, right?
Yeah, Lesnar would turn heel, I think the next week, a week or two later on SmackDown.
Because I know that Brock challenges Vince, and then that's when the heel turn happens. I don't know if it's 1 or 2 weeks after this show. But you're right. I completely forgotten. They did a match at SummerSlam, and then they also did the Iron Man match, which I remember more. Because there was like 85 pinfalls in that match.
Yes.
Really strong match here again. I get why Show was out there for a change. You don't want to waste Angle Lesnar 2 on Vengeance. So,
although you might have gotten a buy rate with it if you did it that way.
Overall, I would give this 1 thumb up and 1 thumb in the middle. So
thumb in the middle.
What's that, a 75%?
Yeah, I think so.
It's a fun show. If you base it solely on the roster on paper, it doesn't look all that impressive. But, bell to bell, most of these matches were really good. You could probably take about 8 minutes off of the Vince and Zach, and you could get rid of the whole Billy and Jamie match. And I think it would be a really fun show.
Yep.
The big stuff was really good. The bad stuff, some of the booking choices, like having Undertaker win, I think it kind of holds it back. But that being said, I think this show made SmackDown feel like what it should be, which is like the quote wrestling show.
Yep.
Like we talked about earlier, 2003 was such a weird year for this. What was your general impression of the brand split when it first happened?
I thought the brand split was good when it first happened because WCW had just closed, right, and they had all these guys, but you're not going to get them all showcased on one show or, two shows, but, obviously your main event guys are going to get more showcased than a Cruiserweight or a Lance Storm or somebody else, a Billy Kidman or a Hurricane Helms or someone like that. I mean, originally it was good, but by, 2004, it kind of falls apart.
I think the novelty wore off just because there was always so much cross-promotion.
Right.
The result of the brand split was intended to give the fans the impression that Raw and SmackDown were two completely separate shows with separate rosters, separate writers, creative team, agents, etc. And that,
one of the things they should have done right off is have the brand-specific shows.
Right. They waited like almost a year before they started doing that. And that SmackDown and Raw were going to be competing with each other. There was no outside competition because they had bought them, so they had to create the competition from within. So these shows were supposed to be presented differently. They were supposed to be filmed differently. Unfortunately, when you have one guy at the top approving everything and his fingerprints are all over both productions, the same directors, the same production team, it all starts to look the same. So Vince is completely unable, to this day, able to remove himself from the production of this product and assign people that he deems trustworthy enough to produce this show that are actually different from each other. So you're promoting SmackDown on Raw, you're promoting Raw on SmackDown, there's still all sorts of cross-contamination. But, it did give guys like you said, Billy Kidman, Tajiri, Jamie Noble,
Edge.
Yeah, Edge was like a breakout star on this show. And was this the time?
Mysterio, even though I think he would have been a star anyway, but I think he became a bigger star because he ended up on SmackDown.
Because I think he had better guys to work with. Like the 2003 Raw roster at this time, it was all like the super big guys, like your Kanes and Triple H's and Scott Steiners and Goldberg and Batista later on and
Mark Henry for a minute.
Like, I'm sure Ray's probably worked with a lot of those guys, like in high-profile matches, but, having him in there with, like, the Angles and Benoits and Edges of the world, the choice was better for him there.
I think that's one way you could have made the brand split better, is actually have the single-branded shows. Other than, I think it fizzled out around, like, late 03, early 04. Because eventually some of the guys that weren't getting used very well got cut.
Yeah, and and Vince doesn't have patience to see things out long term anymore.
Right.
Like, why are you in such a rush? Like, you're hitting the panic button every time the rating goes below a certain number, but you're not in competition with anybody.
A psychologist's dream.
But go out of your way to see the opening match with Benoit and Eddie. Watch the tag match. The main event was pretty fun. Overall, this was a pretty good show. So I would say go out and watch the show.
I would too, yes. And I guess I got the next pick.
You have 2 picks in a row. Do not squander this, young man.
Well, I believe we're going to visit TNA for the first time in a long time for Destination X 2011. And let me run down this card. We have Samoa Joe versus Kazarian. We have Doug Williams versus Mark Haskins. We have Eric Young and Shark Boy against 2 young bucks who are under a different name in TNA.
The Generation Me.
Yep. We have
Jack and Jeremy Buck.
Max and Jeremy.
Okay.
We have.
That's so much better.
Yeah, they were certainly going to get over there. We also have a 4-way Ultimate X involving Alex Shelley, Amazing Red, Shannon Moore, and Robbie E. One of those things is not like the other. We have RVD and Jerry Lynn in 2011. We have.
Can we go back to 1999?
Yeah. We also have a 4-way match for a TNA contract involving Austin Aries, Low-Ki, Jack Evans, and Zema Ion. Abyss versus Brian Kendrick for the X Division title. And the main event is AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels.
So there's no world title match on this show.
No, this was like an X Division revival show because they had pretty much buried it forever, pretty much. Or like for like the last, basically building up to this show, which unfortunately none of the build is on Impact Plus.
So you know more about TNA and Impact than I do, so I will let you take the lead on this. You probably know the angles a whole lot better than I do. Who was the world champ at this time?
Speaking of angles, I believe it was Kurt.
Well, look at that.
And he's not on this show because it's an X Division show. Your other champions at this time, your X Division champion is Abyss.
Wait,
your
what?
Tag team. Yes, that's why he's facing Kendrick.
So the angle going onto this show is that
Abyss is going to kill the X Division.
Is going to kill the X Division that he is the champion of.
Yes.
Who's booking this?
I'm not sure. I don't think Russo was there at this point. Maybe Bischoff.
This sounds like a trip.
He was. I know Bischoff is there at this point, so maybe him.
Well, we'll do some research when we next meet with you, and we'll have the answers for you.
Yes.
Anything else you want to get off your chest? How was rehab? How was your 30-day suspension?
It was a long suspension, but I will be on the Body Pressure Luck podcast with the Place to Be Nation a week from, actually, I believe a week from tomorrow. We'll be taping that.
All right, so we're gonna have to we'll watch for that, and we'll throw a link in here once we get it up.
Yep.
Twitter, how can people get a hold of you? I've noticed that you're starting to use your Twitter more. I appreciate that.
Wrestling5286 on Twitter. I do try to check to see if my stuff is getting posted there that I send. I do the AEW Dark recap for AngryMarks.com, and I review various DVDs.
Do you have a profile picture yet?
I don't have a profile pic for Twitter, I don't think. Maybe I do. I'd have to look.
You have the I was away the day of school photos profile picture.
Yep.
Catch me on Twitter at RowanUnra. I'm accepting all followers. So I think in the last week I've got like 100 new followers. Actually, no, that's not true. I think it's more like 15. I need validation, people.
And on that note, we've covered everything.
I think we've got about everything that we're going to get. So thanks very much for joining us. Mike, thanks for coming back. I appreciate you. And we will catch you for episode 23 in a couple weeks.
Yep. Bye-bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone.